Okay, National Winter Garden.
Now, if I may, before we start reading it, let's read through it, and but then let's address what you think, just what it's about first.
Yeah.
Fair enough?
Well, the micro summary is it's a description of a burlesque striptease.
Yes.
Okay.
All
right, so the first stanza.
Mm-hmm.
Outspoken buttocks and pink beads invite the necessary cloudy clinch of bandy eyes, no extra mufflings here, the world's one flagrant sweating cinch.
Okay. Well, obviously, outspoken buttocks and pink beads. Outspoken simply meaning exposed buttocks.
Mm-hmm.
Exposed to the viewer. Cloudy cinch can refer to the gauzy, diaphanous clothing that sometimes you'll see with burlesque, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Bandy eyes, the eyes of the viewers, of course. Now, here's something interesting. No extra mufflings here. The world's one flagrant sweating cinch. Cinch can mean like a hardening or something that grips, that holds on to, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of inclined to equate this to see that as a vaginal image, frankly.
Well, by the way, Kramer comments on this.
Mm-hmm.
So the cinch is literally a saddle belt, is the dancer's G-string
Mm-hmm.
encircling her body. It identifies her flesh with the world, with the globe.
And this was Kramer's interpretation.
Yeah.
But I do want to point out that cinch also has this particular meaning where it's like something that, like a vice or something that clenches, if you will.
But the problem I have is if the world is the woman's body
Mm-hmm.
and the things around it would be the cinch.
I'm not sure what you mean.
I think it's like the image is opposite. So it should be
the world's one flagrant sweating cinch. I mean, I think it just means that to the viewers of the burlesque, vision, attention is converging into this flagrant sweating cinch, which is, I think, also a vaginal image. I mean, that's the point of eroticism to begin with, basically. Mm-hmm. Interestingly enough, it also says no extra mufflings. That can mean bandages, that can mean something that softens noise. But, of course, MUFF could be a nod, in the vulgar sense, to the same thing, if you will. Does that make sense?
Well, actually, I do think makes a little bit more sense in that the woman represents the earth,
mm-hmm.
and the cinch is society.
Is that what Kramer said? Because
the world's one flagrant. So the world is a cinch,
right? But I think the world.
Hold on.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So the world is wrapped around. So the world is like a G-string. It's wrapped around this woman's privates.
Maybe I'm not saying I'm simply saying that for the viewers of the burlesque, there is one focus in the world right now, and that is this particular cinch. That's all I'm saying. It commands focus, basically.
Well, I think world here refers to society, not the globe itself.
Oh, no, I agree. I'm just saying, of all the possible things they could be focusing on,
mm-hmm.
that's the world. And they're focused on this cinch.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Because, it's flagrant sweating. Yeah, that's, yeah. So.
Yeah, now when he says no extra mufflings, that means she's slightly nude.
Correct. And I'm just wondering, since MUFF in the vulgar sense in some areas means vagina, I'm saying maybe he put that in there with that knowledge at least. Maybe not the direct meaning, but I think he was aware that would be a possible.
It had a double meaning.
Precisely.
Okay, good. Are we ready for the next stanza?
Mm-hmm.
And while legs waken salads in the brain, you pick your blonde out neatly through the smoke. Always you wait for someone else, though always, then rush the nearest exit through the smoke.
Mm-hmm.
So, legs waken salad in the brain. Just the legs arouse
excitation, I guess you could say. That kind of makes more higher thought kind of difficult.
You pick your blonde out neatly through the smoke.
Now, could that be referring to the woman on stage or a different person? I only ask that because it says, always you wait for someone else, though.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe his attention is fixated on this woman, but he's aware that he's waiting for another party, maybe another dancer, maybe another attendant, that kind of thing.
Maybe I interpret it as, I don't think the blonde refers to the dancer.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
It just refers to a temporary paramour to keep the bed warm until someone better comes along.
Potentially. So it's almost like he's...
See,
he's never satisfied with the present lover. He's always thinking on to the next lover after.
Yeah, that's why he says, you wait for someone else,
Right,
though.
always, right.
Then rush the nearest exit through the smoke.
Which I would mean, so she's leaving, so he's pursuing her.
No, I think what that means is maybe, so you pick out your blonde,
Yes.
your temporary paramour, then when you lose interest in her, you rush the nearest exit
through the smoke. Or I was thinking maybe he follows her through the smoke. Or maybe it could just really rush the nearest exit. I guess it just be an inability for commitment.
No, he's trying to get away from her.
I see.
So when he's grown bored with his temporary paramour,
right,
he leaves, he makes an exit, and then the smoke hides his movements.
I guess the thing I'm having is the blonde is that's someone else, but it says neatly through the smoke, and then the exit through the smoke again. And I just take that to mean he's following this blonde through the smoke.
But he's waiting for somebody else.
Right.
So it says, you pick out your blonde through the smoke.
Mm-hmm.
So she's just a temporary paramour.
Right.
Meanwhile, you're waiting for somebody better to come along. And when that better person comes along, you have to get rid of your paramour. That's why you have to take an exit through the smoke so that she can't follow you.
Well, or it could mean just an utter failure to commit. To pursue a single party.
Well, that's when he's not committing to this paramour.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
But you agree with me.
Well, I'm not really reading sex into that necessarily. Like he has sex, he's discarding her. I almost feel like either he's I get the feeling that maybe he's becoming more and more disenchanted with sex in general. Maybe.
But about my
he's not finding his ideal in any woman per se.
Right, but do you think that this line here, then rush the nearest exit through the smoke, do you think that means...
Like he's bailing, basically, on the lover. I'm not ready to commit to that just yet. Maybe. You may be perfectly correct. But I'm still thinking maybe he sees a blonde and he pursues her. But ultimately, he'll just go... He's hopping paramour to paramour, basically. So you're interpreting this as saying his blonde is the paramour, and he just moves on to the next one.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm saying that maybe the blonde is the paramour he is seeking by following her out of the building, versus he's leaving the building to leave the paramour behind. If that makes sense.
But he.
And my main thing is it says, pick your blonde out through the smoke, rush the nearest exit through the smoke.
Well, he picks the smoke in line 2 is in the cabaret.
That's correct, yes.
And then the smoke in the 4th line of the stanza is a different... these are different smokes.
So you're saying the first would be the smoke of the cabaret, the second would be the smoke of...
It's the metaphorical smoke of covering your tracks when you make an exit.
I don't know. I'm not... I don't think always you wait for someone else. Well, yeah, I'm still inclined to say there's a dancer on the stage, but he is not focused entirely on that dancer. He's waiting for someone else. He sees that party, and he follows that party out of the cabaret. That's my interpretation of present.
All right. Well, let me write down my interpretations. All right. Always in last before the final ring, when all the fireworks blare begins. A tom-tom scrimmage with a somewhere violin, some cheapest echo of them all begins.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and tom-tom scrimmage refers to the sound of Indian drums and to the drums in a jazz combo.
Precisely.
This line recalls Eliot's among the windings of the violins, and that ariettes of cracked cornets. Inside my brain, a dull tom-tom begins. And this is Portrait of a Lady.
I'm not entirely... I don't think it's really necessary to infer that he took this from Kramer, though.
You mean he took it from Eliot?
They took it from Eliot, right.
But you got the word tom-tom and violin in... So that's not a coincidence. You see that?
Well, I agree, but in jazz ensembles in these clubs, you would have a drum and you would have a violin or fiddle.
But remember, Eliot's his favorite poet. He's obviously... You remember, he read he read Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock 25 times.
Oh, did he really? And I was unaware of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So... And all throughout the poem, he quotes Eliot in several places.
Okay, I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
So, always and last before the final ring. So, I think this is emphasizing how cheap and tawdry this setting happens to be. The tom-tom scrimmage, the cheapest echo of them all. So, fireworks would be the crescendo, of course. Fireworks could also refer to orgasm in sexual congress, I think. And of course the prelude to
always
that.
And last before the final ring, when all the fireworks blare.
So it's saying, like, prior to consummation, sexual consummation, there's like this very cheap, not foreplay, that's not what I'm looking for, but maybe like a very cheap, cheap seduction, a cheap process of seduction.
So I interpreted this line as just before the final bell, the cheapest musical performance begins.
Yeah, and it could have a literal interpretation. It has that literal. I think it has a double meaning. There's literal, of course, by describing what typically takes place in a cabaret. But it can also refer to just sexual congress. And there's like this kind of lead up to it that's very cheap, very contrived. Maybe it could be something on the lines of prostitution.
Like, I think maybe the final ring when all the fireworks blare, that could refer to the striptease itself, like when she's fully nude.
Right, of course, and I agree with you. But I'm also saying it could have a double meaning and refer to orgasm, prostitution, that kind of thing.
So then we would just alter the paraphrase to before the final bell, that is the striptease, or the
the final act of the night, if you will.
The final denudification, the cheapest musical performance begins.
Right. The next stanza?
Yeah.
Okay.
And shall we call her whiter than the snow, sprayed first with ruby, then with emerald sheen, least tearful and least glad, who knows her smile, a caught slide shows her sandstone gray between. Okay. So the first question, shall we call her whiter than the snow? Obviously not. Is she chaste and innocent? No. The lighting sprays her with ruby. Now, Kramer thinks that ruby and emerald refer to the Book of Revelations.
I would disagree. I don't think that's necessarily the case. If you're in a cabaret, it's like if you go to a strip club, you get these contrasting neon flashes. This is just the lighting that illuminates the cabaret stage. Really, I don't think it necessarily has to have a Whore of Babylon reference.
Well, the reference is not very explicit. So
right.
Okay, so she sprayed first with ruby, then with emerald sheen, least tearful and least glad.
So in a striptease or in cabaret, there's this presentation where she smiles. She smiles at the customer, etc., etc. But we don't know if this entail. It says least tearful and least glad, in that there's no genuine emotional content to the smile. It is just a show, and in fact, it may mask her her sandstone gray between, an internal numbness, deadness, that kind of thing.
Well, Kramer interprets, and I kind of think he's right here, that it's the gray pubis, which has the texture of sandstone.
The gray pubis, if her pubis is shaved,
which I doubt it, since it's the 20s.
I don't know. Well, but it's stating. Hold on just a minute.
But it shows her sandstone gray. Maybe that just refers to the skin.
I'm kind of interpreting that a little more metaphorically. I mean, just kind of, there's no happiness here, there's no emotional content, she's deadened, she's numb, that kind of thing. It's my interpretation.
Yeah, that's a more safer interpretation. It's less fantastical.
Now, if we did go back to Sprayed first with Ruby and then with Emerald, we could make some symbolic interpretations here. Ruby being, passion, lust. Emerald maybe referring to jealousy or envy, that kind of thing.
What?
But I'm still inclined to say it just means the lighting within the cabaret.
Yeah, but I think there's something more than just the literal meaning of the words here.
Right. I hesitate to go to the Whore of Babylon reference. I could be wrong. But if there is a symbolism with its color, I would make emotional associations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But also, it's just the standard trick of trying to portray somebody as luxurious and elegant with jewelry, and they're really not.
Sure. Okay. So we could say that the ruby and the emerald they're like cosmetic, meant to make her seem to be something. That makes more sense.
Yeah.
Than the Whore Babylon thing. I agree.
Okay, so the slideshow, it's showing her body, so I definitely think Sandstone refers to her body.
It's not a slideshow. It's a slide show. Show is not a noun. Show is a verb. So what I'm thinking...
Yeah, the slide is a noun, shows is a verb, yeah.
Right. So I'm thinking, to the discerning eye, you can ascertain that she may be unhappy, emotionally dead inside. There's no correspondence between the emotion and the show she's actually putting on. Sandstone just means, dead, like stone. Insensate, no.
But it's more obvious. You got to go with the more obvious interpretation. It's a striptease. Mm-hmm. There's a slide showing. Slides show physical things. So you got to assume the more obvious interpretation.
So you're saying...
Let me finish. And because it's a striptease, I think it's more obvious that Sandstone Gray refers to the body.
Well, again, I don't know where the gray is coming from so much, unless it just means when there's not light focused on her body, the red and the green. I don't think we're dealing with a slide as like in a slideshow. It's simply a momentary glimpse of this unhappiness, of this incongruity between her emotional state and this joyous show she's putting on, so to speak. I can't interpret Sandstone Gray as something physical.
It's so obvious that it does refer to something physical.
No, I think it's something emotional.
No, but look, he's already referred to smile and tearful.
Yes.
And we've admitted that she's been sprayed with ruby and emerald. So he's already referring to her body.
Right.
He would continue to refer to that.
But less tearful, less glad can refer to the smile, but there also is emotional content. And I think this theme of emotional content carries forward into the final line.
But Sandstone it's more associated with the body than the emotions.
But it can also be a symbol for emotional deadness and
but
numbness.
it's less rare that happens. It's rare that happens.
But why is he... So what exactly is Sandstone Gray if it's bodily?
Yeah, her skin.
But sandstone?
Yeah.
Why would you say sandstone? Sandstone itself is a symbol.
Right, but it's a body that's dead. It's a body
But she's not dead.
Spiritless body. Unhappy body.
But then we're going right back to the emotion again.
Right, but you can still refer to the body in an emotional sense.
Right, but we're gonna have to win a disagree, Colin. I'm sorry. And it could very well be the case that we're both right, and there's a double meaning to this either way.
Well,
but I'm really inclined to say that is about unhappiness. This young woman's unhappiness. Okay, well, let's go to the next one.
Right, her eyes exist in swiveling of her teats. Pearls whip her hips. A drench of whirling strands. Mm-hmm. Her silly snake rings begin to surmount each other. Turquoise fakes on tinseled hands. Okay, so Crane thinks that the eyes being equated with the nipples echoes Crane's response to a a dance done by Isadora Duncan in 1922, and he was good friends with Isadora Duncan. He quotes Isadora Duncan in one of his other poems in the bridge. For Crane, Duncan's exposure of her own breasts in this high art performance was an expression not of how her body was seen, but of what her eye and her mind's eye could see. And so here's a letter that he wrote. Glorious to see her there with her tight breast and nipple quite exposed, telling the audience that the truth was not pretty, that it was really indecent, and telling them boobs about Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, and Scriabin. All right, so this is a letter to Gordon Munson. It is not clear whether boobs is a pun or whether Crane knew that the exposure of a single breast was an Amazonian pose.
Mm-hmm.
And then Snake... Okay, her silly snake rings begin.
I think I know what that one is. Well, first, so her eyes exist in...
Well, let's continue with this.
Okay, go ahead.
Just the snake.
Sure.
Kramer says it's the image of a dancing snake charmer, part of a popular exoticism of low popular entertainment with carnival roots is also in play, as well as the similar image of Salome, also a frequent figure in the popular culture of the time, whose dancing was frequently represented as writhing and serpentine.
Yeah, it's referring to the Dance of the Seven Veils with Salome, of course.
The Mountain of the Rings suggests a travesty that is a burlesque version of Eternity, of which the snake that devours its own tail.
The symbol is called the Ouroboros, as I recall. Well, my interpretation differs a little bit. So her eyes exist in the swivelings of her teats. Maybe she is not focused on the audience, but just on her dancing, on the general motions she has to perform for the audience. So her focus is on herself, on her body, and the way it's presented to the to the audience. Pearls whip her hips, drench whirling strands. That's costume, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with silly snake rings, I'm thinking simply the motions, the sinuous motions of the arms.
Yeah.
And as they mount and interweave that kind of thing. And then turquoise fakes on tinseled hands. Again, this is just the costume, cosmetic kind of thing.
Right.
So it's like Salome's Dance of the Seven Veils, very seductive, very practiced. But I'm still inclined to say her eyes exist in swivelings of her teats. It could be that, yes, that is a reference to the breast and the nipple, and that's what people are focusing on. But I'm more inclined to say her focus is entirely on her performance per se.
Well, I translated the first line as just her nipples like eyes swing on her teats.
Right. And I'm saying that's certainly a valid interpretation, but my interpretation was more she's just so focused on her performance, not on making any contact with the audience per se.
So that would be... don't see really how you get that.
Get what?
She's focused on the audience with her eyes.
No. She's not focused on the audience. She's focused on her own body.
She's focused on
the movement she has to go through. Her eyes exist in swiveling of her teats. Yeah, I think your interpretation may very well be correct, but there could be another interpretation, which is simply that all of her focus and all her attention is on her dance, on her performance, if you will, versus any interest in the people in the audience.
No, I don't think you can make that.
Why not?
Because in order to say that, you would need something about. You would need something about her eyes. There's nothing in that line that suggests that her eyes are worried about herself.
No. Her eyes, it's just a symbol. It's symbolic of her attention, on her focus, is what I'm saying.
Well,
she's focused on the swiveling of the breasts, how her body performs, that kind of thing.
No, because that's just not obvious. You're.
But it doesn't have to be obvious.
No, hold on. You're being too imaginative in your interpretation. You're seeing things that aren't there. You're going beyond the words too much.
No, I really don't think so. I think that my interpretation is perfectly sound based on that.
No. You would need another word. You need another word in that sentence.
Her eyes exist in swivelings of her tits.
Right.
Her eyes are her attention, and her focus is entirely on the body. Her attention.
But there's nothing in there about focus.
Her eyes exist in the swiveling of her tits.
Right. That doesn't.
That means that she is focused.
No, it doesn't. No, you.
I gotta disagree.
So, for example, suppose I wanted to write a sentence about my eyes being in my chest,
Right.
and they're not focusing on my activity.
Okay.
Suppose I wanted to express that thought.
Sure.
I can't express that thought to you because you would always think that whenever I say my eyes are in my chest, then I'm focusing on myself. So you understand?
It's premised on the conversation. I mean, we're dealing with two separate contexts.
No,
This is highly imaginative poetry, and I think the interpretation.
You're the one that's imaginative. Okay? So if I wanted to express the thought, my eyes are in my chest, and they're not focused on what I'm doing.
Okay.
I only have to say my eyes are in my chest. Whenever I say my eyes are in my chest, no one says, aha, you're focusing on what you're doing. Nobody says that.
But it's not her chest. It's the swivelings of her chest, which I take to mean she's very, very focused on choreography. When it comes to cabaret,
there's nothing in there about focusing. It just means that she's swiveling. You can't say that she's focusing.
We're gonna have to disagree on that.
All right.
We're gonna have to disagree on that.
Okay, all right. Pearls whip her hip. All right, so we've. She's wearing a lot of jewelry. Some of it's fake, and some of it's
of course.
cheap.
Hence, turquoise fakes on tinsel dance, of course.
And she dances a serpentine dance, connecting her to Eve in seduction. How about that?
Show me what you're saying. I'm sorry, say that again for me.
Yeah, she dances.
Oh, I see. She dances a serpentine dance. I still think since this is a dance and it's seduction, I still think the best interpretation is Salome and the Dance of the Seven Veils. As you know, she said, demanded the head of John the Baptist from her father Herod. That's my interpretation. It's more of a Salome kind of thing.
Okay, we wait at that writhing pool. Her pearls collapsed, all but her belly buried in the floor. In the lewd trance of a final muted beat, we flee her spasm through a fleshless door.
Well, I think with the pearls collapse, the writhing pool, at the conclusion of some of these erotic dances, I mean, they end up on the floor. I've seen depictions of Arab dances where they're on their back, and that is basically the conclusion. It represents the supine position of a woman ready to be mounted, engage in coitus, that kind of thing. It's the ultimate submissive position.
Yeah.
Which is how I'm seeing that. All but her belly buried in the floor. I've seen the dances where the only movement will be this undulating with the torso. The lewd trance of a final muted beat. That's the final.
Well, hold on before you move on.
Sure.
Yeah, I think you're right about that because I had trouble with that line. So her pearls collapse. Would that mean like is she taking her pearls off?
Not necessarily. It just means that she's on the floor and so are her pearls, basically. You may be right. I'm just saying it could be either way.
She has collapsed along with her pearls.
Precisely.
Okay. She has collapsed along with her pearls, and she is now dancing on the. She's now dancing on the floor with her back on the. She's now writhing on the floor.
I want to hazard a maybe overly imaginative interpretation with her pearls collapsed. Pearls often representative of semen. So an expenditure of semen, for instance, maybe. Or like expenditure of semen would be the end point of this fantasy or this what have you.
Well, he also mentions the word spasm here.
Exactly. Now this is interesting. I like this. We flee her spasm through a fleshless door.
Well, hold on. Before we move on to that, let me
sure.
write this down.
Of course.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, where were we?
Fleshless door.
We flee her spasm through a fleshless door. So we see the spasm. Why are we fleeing the spasm? Obviously, it says through a fleshless door, so there's no consummation of our desire with her, for instance. We flee her spasm through a fleshless door. Why are we fleeing? And does that relate to one of the top stanzas where it says we're always waiting for the next woman?
Yeah. So I interpreted that as the dance done, and we flee her arousal. She's arousing herself in her dance.
Right.
And fleshless door interpreted as life-giving properties. By the way, Kramer interprets it as the womb, traditionally the door of birth, undergoes a reversal in this image. It is fled for an unspecified, fleshless, hence dead and unsubstantial, as well as immaterial counterpart.
Well, maybe that'll carry it through, because if you look at the very last line, bone by infant bone, but I hesitate to make that interpretation. We flee her spasm. This is something about her spasm we are panicked by. We feel the need to get away from.
Yeah.
Through a fleshless door. Obviously, nothing's consummated here. It's just a spectatorship. Flee her spasm through a fleshless door. Let's see.
Just how would you improve this interpretation, which is we flee her life-giving properties?
I'm not inclined to make this anything to say it's really mystical per se, at least not in this stanza. We flee her spasm. Yeah, I don't think we're afraid of her womb or her life-giving properties. It's something about sexuality that's causing us to flee.
Her life-giving properties. So.
Well, let's discuss the next stanza. It may shed light on that. Okay.
All right. Yet to the empty trapeze of your flesh, O Magdalene, each comes back to die alone. Then you, the burlesque of our lust and faith, lug us back lifeward, bone by infant bone.
Could this be a masturbation reference? A fleshless door to the empty trapeze of your flesh. We come back to die. In the French, I believe there's a term called... it means the little death.
Yeah.
Which is orgasm. I'm kind of thinking maybe this is a masturbation reference.
Yeah. That's how I interpreted it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
And also Kramer agrees with that.
Okay.
So the trapeze was a stage prop like the poles used by nude dancers today. It was left over from the circus and was adopted in burlesque as a sexual appliance, a surrogate phallus or machine body.
Right.
Here merged with the flesh that swings the onlooker back from death to life, just as the prototype Mary Magdalene was the first witness of Christ's resurrection. To die alone refers to orgasm. It was known as the little death.
Yeah.
So each spectator, they masturbate alone due to the arousal of your dance with the trapeze, O Magdalene.
That's correct.
And after we have come, you drag us back to life.
Right. The empty trapeze of your flesh, I just take that to mean there's no sexual engagement with the body, with the flesh. But this is interesting. So then you, the burlesque of our lust and faith, lug us back lifeward.
So lug us, like we've died.
Right, the little death, of course.
And you lug us back lifeward, bone by infant bone.
And of course, bone by infant bone would refer to we are dead. We are of bones at that point. So let's go back to the very top real fast.
All right. Outspoken buttocks.
The second one, again.
And wild legs waken salads in the brain.
Right. You pick your blonde out neatly through the smoke. Always you wait for someone else, always, which is interesting. I'm a little unclear on that, to be frank.
All right.
Always waiting for someone else. Maybe he,
No, you have your paramour, but she's just what you can get right now, and you're always waiting for something better to come along.
Oh, I see what you mean now. Which means that he's never finding the ideal, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's just disappointment after disappointment after disappointment. Okay.
All right, so are we done?
Yeah, I think so, actually.
Okay.